Hello, everyone, and welcome to Pro Wrestling Inside and Out. Thank you so much for being a part of our show today. We are going to be talking about professional wrestling, a wide open discussion about what's going on in professional wrestling, what happened in professional wrestling. And we've got two guests with us. First, let me bring in Ronnie West, my brother. And he needs no introduction, if I can get it out. Jack Lord, welcome tonight to this episode of the Wrestling Conversation. It's our conversation about professional wrestling. And before we get started, let me make sure that Theodore McIrvin, he is in the house. Hey guys, Turbo Ted in the house. Thank you so much for being a part of it. And Terry Lustagraph, thank you so much. And if you have anything that you would like to talk about, any wrestler, any information about professional wrestling, if you have a question, just send it on to us, because tonight it's wide open. We're not talking about any kind of subject. We're just a wide open conversation about professional wrestling. First of all, I want to talk to Rodney because he has something that he would like to talk about, and he's got some information. And David, thank you so much for coming on here, David Lawson. And Rodney, go ahead and your thoughts.
My thoughts. I want to talk about great wrestling arenas throughout the years. I mean, if you talk about Atlanta, for years, the sports arena was owned by Paul Jones. They had wrestling events all the time. In fact, they did TV on, I think it was on Tuesday mornings. And then they also did, that's when Jim Carlisle would have come up from Columbus. Then you talk about Fred Ward owned his own arena. He had the sports arena there in Columbus, Georgia, where your TV came from. That also occasionally showed other places, such as in Knoxville and in Macon. And then the great Sportatorium in Tampa. One of my favorite arenas was the Chattanooga Memorial Auditorium until they remodeled it. And it ruined the whole thing. But Memorial Auditorium was one of my favorite places to go. Tremendous energy, tremendous atmosphere there, as well as the Atlanta City Auditorium and Bell Auditorium and Augusta. Just tremendous arenas that some are not with us anymore.
That is true. Jack, you have any favorite arena that you used to go to that you just said, hey, this is the great spot for wrestling?
When I was still more or less a fan, the Atlanta City Auditorium to me was the perfect arena. Smoke filled, just jam packed, so loud you couldn't hear yourself think. And of course it was, you had some of the best wrestling in the world there. So, it was key to me. But of course, Boutwell in Birmingham is, I tell everybody that's our Madison Square Garden of the South, and I'll stick by that till the day I die.
Yeah.
But on the independent level, Dillard's Music Park over in Rome, Georgia that was one of the greatest places I ever worked at. And there's Chris Dick saying the same thing.
Same thing. Dillard's Music, Rome, Georgia. I think Atlanta City Auditorium, I think it has to go down. Augusta was a good at the auditorium there. That was a good atmosphere. In Shreveport, Louisiana, auditorium there was just tremendous. Kenneth Smith, hello. How are you doing, Kenneth? Good to have you on here with us. Where is Bob Holly? Jack, do you know where Bob Holly is?
He's, as far as I know, he still lives down around the Mobile area, and he still does independent shows from time to time.
Well, I don't think I had heard about Bob Holly in a long time since he left WWE or WWF or whatever they were called at the time.
Whatever they were when he left, yeah.
I mean, I don't know what it was called when he left there. There is Ronnie West coming on there. Hello, thank you so much for coming on. I want to talk about something it's very interesting. I don't know if the people know this or not, but several times the world heavyweight champion, the NWA world heavyweight champion, would, before they would become the world champion, they would go to Harley Race, Bob Geil's territory, and each one of them would win the NWA Missouri Heavyweight Championship. Did y'all know that almost every champion won that title before they became the world heavyweight champion?
Yeah, you know, it's touted a lot by the magazines as being the stepping stone. So that I guess that was a way to help Bob and his territory out. But yeah, it was.
I remember Gordon talking about it on Atlanta TV too. Former Missouri State champion, and then, you know, Harley Race, Terry Funk, you know, the whole, yeah.
Even Kerry Von Erich went there and won that title before he won the title, which was very interesting to me that almost every one of these people, you know, you learn something every day, and I did not realize that everybody had won that title prior to. Let's see, Terry Lestegraph Fairgrounds, Nashville, Tennessee. Yes, that is a great place. Chris Vick, tell Jack Ralph. Chris Vick says Diller's Music Park is the Madison Square Garden of the South.
Okay,
let me correct one thing here. Chris, shut up. Okay.
Dennis Cook, hello, gentlemen. You, Mark, for your program. Does anyone know what Norvell Austin is doing these days? Seemed like when he retired, he fell off the grid. You know, I don't think anybody can find him. And I'll tell you what we're going to do. I see somebody that's come on, and he's going to join us on this program today. And I believe he was in search for Norvell Austin as well. So let's bring in old Charlie Platt. Charlie, somebody asked if they know where Norvell Austin is. Did y'all ever find Norvell? Are you with us there, Charlie?
He's still watching on YouTube.
Maybe he'll be with us in just a minute. Charlie, you with us? I don't think Charlie can hear us.
No, I don't think he's picking up the audio.
Now, give me a little audio there, Mr. Director. I tell you what, we don't know where. Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I think you're getting a delay.
Is that better?
Yes. Can you hear us now?
Are you watching on YouTube?
No, I'm watching on the StreamYard.com.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah,
You're sounding good now. You're sounding great now.
Okay. Norvell is the missing link in more ways than one. The thing is, the last trace that we had of Norvell was 2 or 3 different people said they thought he had moved from Pensacola to Mobile, but he has just really fallen off the grid. And there's a lot of us that would love to contact Norvell, get in touch with him, and see him for sure.
Yeah, we'd like
to note. I've got a buddy, Doug McKay, over in Mississippi, and if I'm not mistaken, I think he had contact with him not too long ago. But
Jack, find out if you will.
Can't be sure, but I will.
Let's
you guys. What's the subject for tonight?
Well, now we were asking the first question we ask is Rodney came up with what is some of the greatest arenas that had professional wrestling, and we had talked about Shreveport, the Minnesota Auditorium, Atlanta at the Atlanta City Auditorium. Jack said Birmingham with the Boutwell Auditorium, but I don't know. Did anybody say the Houston County Farm Center in Dothan, Alabama?
Not yet.
Not yet. That's coming.
I can't hear Brent. I can hear Rodney and I can hear Jack. I don't know what the deal is.
Well, we were talking about great wrestling arenas, and Jack had talked about the Atlanta City Auditorium. I had talked about the Chattanooga Memorial Auditorium. Britt had mentioned Municipal Auditorium in Shreveport, Louisiana, and anybody. And no, at this point, nobody's mentioned the Houston County Farm Center. Do you think that's one of the big ones?
That's one of the big ones.
That is one of the big ones.
If you talk to any of the guys that work there, with the exception of whiny baby Arn Anderson. Everybody else said it was the big one. Arn says, "Oh, I got thrown out on the floor and I got dirty.
Oh.
They didn't have good showers there." Who gives a rat's rear end, Arn? My God, this is where you got your start and started making money in your career.
That's right.
But no, Houston County Farm Center, and one of the reasons it had to be, you can all go back to the Florida archives that on the in the Facebook page of Championship Wrestling from Florida, and they give the cards going back years and years ago. And one of the most interesting things, and I talked to Ron about this not too long ago, one of the most interesting things was Houston County Farm Center in Dothan, Alabama, outdrew Miami. Now put that in a cigar there, Jack, and take a puff off of that. Think about Dothan is now only like 65,000 people. Well, back in those days, we're talking about I don't know, 35,000 people compared to Metro Miami, and Miami was drawing 2,800 people, 3,200 people, and on some of those same dates you look at in the Gulf Coast days or in the Southeastern days, and my gosh, the West boys will tell you we were filling up the farm center, and that was about 5,000 people when you take ringside and the stands all in consideration, and even take those numbers, go up against Atlanta. Who would ever thought, Atlanta ran the Omni once a month, and here we were four nights a month in the Houston County Farm Center. And if it wasn't sold out, it was darn near it just about every time we ran.
It was the place to be, no doubt about that, on a Saturday night or Friday night, depending on what year.
Yeah, and that's something that came to mind the other day when we did change to Saturday nights. And the reason it changed to Saturday nights was to accommodate better the TV and move some other towns around, because TV, if you had the champion in, you could get the champion to come off of Atlanta TV, fly into Dothan at about 3:30 on Saturday afternoon, pick him up at the airport, put him on TV at 5. We'd pre-tape, put him on their TV at 5:30, and then go straight into the house show with him. And when it was Friday night town, it was kind of a waste to do that, because your big stars that you did get out of Atlanta, not that we use that many except the champion, it just became a better playing field, so to speak, for everything to do it that way. Brent, I sent you some stuff, emailed it to you late this afternoon. I don't know if you got it or not, but there are some couple of classic matches I sent you that when you get a chance, we'll do them one day, and maybe get our buddy Michael Norris to join us on them, because it goes back into the days of Gulf Coast wrestling that you and I talked about having a conversation on, and the fact that Gulf Coast wasn't just really one territory. It was at one time about 3 different territories, and it covered from the Texas-Louisiana border all the way back to Tallahassee, Florida. Now, state of Mississippi, Louisiana, part of Alabama, and then there was Bill Golden, Jimmy's father, had Montgomery area and had what they call the tri-state territory there. And then Nick still controlled at one time Birmingham. And I think it was 1981 when Ron and Southeastern took over Birmingham from Nick. So the history of that territory and the people who have been in it, just unbelievable. Now, these are, when Jack was a kid, a match between Don Carson and Greg Peterson on TV would have been a heck of a show, wouldn't it, buddy?
Sure would have.
And I sent you that match, And that was off of a Dothan TV. You had Dothan TV, Pensacola TV, Mobile TV, and I think Hattiesburg, Mississippi TV way back yonder. And I think a fellow named Ronnie West way back yonder, the West boys can help me on this, actually came down and worked for Lee for a while when the territory was that big. Is that true, guys?
That's right. Absolutely. He came down, and I don't think he was Ronnie West at that point. I believe they called him something else because Kevin Sullivan he was a West at the time. But I think he played as something else, or he was somebody else. And first time he was ever doing the troubleshooting referee, from what Dad told us. Apparently the rules had been thrown out the door, and it was people Lee Fields felt the fans were getting ripped off. So he decided he was going to go through this period of really enforcing the rules to the point where I think Terry Garvin and Bobby Shane were the Gulf Coast Tag Team Champions. And Dad reached down to check Terry Garvin, and Garvin just slapped him in the back of the head. And when he did, Dad rang the bell, gave the belts. They lost the belts right there on TV. So it was another building process. And as he said that the more the rules were enforced, the bigger and the bigger the crowds got until they finally did something later on that was heated. But
now, can you hear me, Charlie?
Another part of the wrestling history that I have been discovering and looking at lately was the talent roster that was working Georgia, Florida for Eddie Graham, and the Gulf Coast for Lee, and then up in Tennessee. And the mainstream guys, and we're talking in the 1960s and early 70s, those mainstream workers that were the horses out there drawing the money, your Don Carsons, your Leon Baxter, the wrestling pro, who worked under many different names under the hood in different places, those guys were rotating around to those southeastern territories, and maybe once in a while go out to Oklahoma and work for McGurk and things like that. But the quality of the talent and the work ethic of the guys back in those days was just impeccable compared to what we got into later in the business. If you were a professional wrestler and you laced up your boots, not that I ever did, but you had to have the ability to walk into that ring and work with anybody they put you in there with, no matter what style it was. And we had so many different styles actually from that one, and it goes back to the old Welch family and the Charlie Cars that trained the Fields boys and things like that. But there were several different styles that they used, and that group actually controlled the southern United States for about a 30-year period. Jack, would you agree with that?
I totally agree.
And we just don't have that today. I'm not knocking the product, but the ability and the knowledge that those guys had, and the ring psychology. And I'm not saying this to blow up Rodney and his director brother over there that sometimes don't answer his phone. We won't call any names. Your brother, so I'm talking about your brother,
I have to chip in and buy him a card for his phone.
Get him a prepaid. That's right. That's what we need to do. But you guys, your dad passed away 7 years ago last week. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
And we have something in common. Last week I lost my mom, and I know you guys think about your dad every day, and every time I think about wrestling, I think about Ronnie, and I want to say this because I worked with Ronnie in so many different capacities as far as helping him check up on houses, to the announcing thing on camera with him, and watched him work behind the scenes with the guys in the dressing rooms and go over interviews and things like that. And he was as smooth. I think Ron Fuller said it best. He was as smooth as they got. And that's why Ron put so much on his shoulders, is because your dad could handle it in a way no other could, and do it in a dignified manner that nobody could ever get mad at him. I mean, I never knew anybody to get ticked off at Ronnie West. I really didn't. And he was top of the line, whether it was in the wrestling business or later in the years. I had the privilege when doing the early morning show and Dothan on TV for like 25 years to work with Ronnie, with Cole Brothers Circus, and to also work with Brent, and to work with Michael Norris. And all of us had brushes with the business, but I don't guess we ever had an argument, did we, Brent?
I don't think so.
I don't remember. Seemed like we were all on the same page.
I think we're all on the same page all the time, but what a legacy Ronnie had. I saw Charlie Smith post something the other day on Facebook. His first Hardway, $10 he got for it in Atlanta. They overpaid him as far as I was concerned.
He should have paid them for that. Is that what you're trying to say?
Okay, so Charlie still can't hear me, can he? Charlie, can you hear me, Charlie? He still cannot hear me. Let's see if we can get Tim Horner on. Tim Horner's came on, but I don't think his mic is on.
He's not turned his mic on. He needs to click on the mic there. Down at the bottom, you'll see Tim. You'll see down at the bottom of your screen. You'll see mute, stop camera mic. Click on that camera mic there and let us have access.
I think Tim is there.
Can you hear me?
There he goes.
There you go.
We heard you.
Are you there?
Can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
I can hear you.
That's the first time I've been able to hear you. Not that I really wanted to, but I mean, oh man.
Well, Tim, you are
the days that we all spent working together, and the history of this old Gulf Coast, Southeastern, Continental territory. I know you guys have done a lot of programming about the Continental days, but I think if you go back to the Gulf Coast, and I think Ron said on the program I watched with you guys not long ago, 1983 was the biggest year for this territory. And by that, I think he was talking about Continental as well. 83 was the turn year for Bob into the heel platform. And this thing just blew up down here, guys. I mean, it was so hot. It was, words can't describe the heat that was down here, not just from temperatures, but I'm talking about every arena was selling out week after week after week. And it was a lot of fun to be a part of that. It was a lot of fun.
all right. So
Tim Horner, you still there?
Did we lose Tim?
I'm still here.
Oh, there you are.
Okay.
Come on in.
well, I'll tell you what's happening, Tim. Charlie cannot hear me for some reason. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
For some reason, Charlie can't hear me. He can hear everybody else, but can't hear me. So
I feel like he got the better part of the deal myself.
So, Rodney, you're going to have to take care of this.
I'll translate.
Go ahead and take care of this.
This will be great. I can tell him you're saying all kinds of things about it.
Well, you go ahead and handle
what?
You go and handle it, Rodney, and then I'll sit back, because without Charlie hearing me, that they'll think he'll think we're just pantomiming over here. So you go ahead and take care of it with Tim and them, and I'll drop out for a minute.
Tim can hear you, Brent. Tim can hear you.
Yes.
Yeah, Tim can't hear you. Go ahead and ask him a question.
Well, Tim Horner, we are on right now. We're with Jack Lord, Ronnie West, and Charlie Platt, even though Charlie cannot hear me. Tim, tell me what you've been up to in the last few years. We have not seen you. We've been talking about you on Continental Championship Wrestling, showing some videos and stuff of you. So tell us what's happening, Tim Horner.
I need to translate. Right now, Brent, Charlie, is asking Tim Horner where he has been and what he's been up to. Okay, go ahead, Tim.
Well, I'm still in East Tennessee. Kind of just been laying low as far as the wrestling business for the last couple of years. When Brad passed, I kind of lost interest. But I found going to these conventions and stuff was therapeutic. Getting to tell and relive some stories, road stories from Brad. You know, I was, as Bob said one time, you're just one of my other boys.
True.
So that was a compliment, very much so. I am currently county commissioner up here in Hamlin County. I've been in the bail bond business since '96. And a fugitive recovery agent. So that's kept me busy. When my girls, well, let me back just up a little bit. I was in New York for WWE in 2006 as a producer and agent, and it just got to be a little more than what I was looking for at the time. My girls were playing soccer and cheering, and I didn't want to miss them growing up, and so I decided, maybe it's best to just move on at that point. So I'm here in Tennessee and, loving it.
Tim, can you hear me?
I can.
Something that I want to mention. Yesterday, 8 years ago, I was the victim of a blade job that went about 14 inches right down through here. And they told the family, after they super glued me back up, that the thing to do was probably make final arrangements because they didn't think I would come off the ventilator. I stayed on that ventilator 8 days, and by the grace of the good Lord, I came off. Then they told me at the follow-up that wish we could say we fixed you for a year or 2 or 3, but in your condition, you could be gone tomorrow. Like I said, 8 years ago yesterday. And unfortunately, that fall, we all had to meet in Marietta and say goodbye to the greatest worker, as far as I'm concerned, that I ever saw. Versatile worker in the ring. And and I'm saying that over all the big guys that made it way up higher than he did. I'm talking about Brad. And that was something that you and Tom Pritchard, who I was there when Tom and I went in together at the funeral home, that is something that I don't think we'll ever get over, because Bradley James was without a doubt the most cordial guy that ever put on a pair of tights, laced up boots. If there was a darkness over the dressing room, heck, it could have been everybody got a Nick Goulas payoff, and Brad could have brought laughter to the whole place. He was just the best that ever was, and I always said he could work with a broomstick, put the broomstick over, come back the next week and sell out with it.
Yeah, he was amazing. I don't know that he ever had a bad match.
I never saw one.
He was, we're all our worst critics. And Brad would, come in sometime. He said, "Man, that didn't feel right." Well, those 10,000 people thought it was good, So yeah, he was just an amazing person too. I mean, we traveled for golly 4 or 5 years together. You know, Ole put us together in Georgia in '84. And I heard y'all talking a couple weeks ago about when Vince came down. You know, they Brad and I asked us, and of course, Ole had given me probably my first biggest break in the business. Not my first TV, but at that point, it was my first day coming back out of the Crockett territory and beat Hawk on TV, one of the Road Warriors. And so at that, you know, Ole gave me an opportunity. And so, you know, Brad and I, we decided we wanted to show a little loyalty to Ole. So we stayed on till you know, the well ran dry, I guess, so to speak. And then we both went to Louisiana. That's when Brad went and was a North American champion. And I had been there once before. First time I went was out of the Crockett territory. Jake Roberts got us down there with Grizzly Smith. And I'm going to tell this story real quick because Ronnie was in it. They didn't run Biloxi much then. And we went to Biloxi, and it was me and I want to say Shawn Michaels, but I think it was Terry Daniels at the time. And we were working with the grapplers, Tony Anthony and Lynn Denton in Biloxi. And Grizz said, you know, you guys go out there, you know, graps over. That's all we used to get back then. You know, we didn't set 5 hours and go over a 4-minute match. And so this was the spot with Tony. It was a tackle drop down. I gave him a hip toss. As he was going over, he said, Lenny's coming in for one. And as Lenny came in for one, he said, Tony's coming back for another one. So I gave Tony another. And then when Lenny came over again, your dad was running in circles trying to stay out of the way. And I said, Ronnie. And Ronnie ran in and took a hip toss. and the place just went wild. It just exploded. It was just one of those magical. He just came running and took a big hip toss, and Grizz came back and said, "Don't do that again."
I don't doubt it.
Tim, you just touched on something.
The pop.
You just touched on something that back in the day, you didn't sit there for the hours and go over exactly what the promo, as they call it, was going to be. You didn't go over what you were going to do in the match. Sometimes the finish was decided in the ring, and it was get out there. You know,
absolutely.
We need 15 minutes, we need 20 minutes, or whatever. And you guys had the talent and the ability. And when I'm saying that, you were up there with Brad as far as could fly around that ring, and I would just sit there and just, you know, here I am, part of the business. But there were certain guys that I thoroughly enjoyed watching more than others. Not to say everybody wasn't talented, but you had that ability to keep me you kept my attention. And the question I want to ask you is, who trained you and when?
I broke in the fall of '78 in Knoxville. And I'll tell this quick story too. I tried. I know you boys remember the matches at the Tally Ward in Morristown.
Yeah.
Tally across the high school. I took it upon myself to try to get in the ring. Robert Fuller and the Stomper. Stomper was managed by Gorgeous George Jr. For some reason, my 165-pound butt thought I was going to help. And Louis, whom I know y'all know, was booking at the time, and he came out, cussed me out, French, American, and everything, and tried to kick me out. And the police said, "I'll take care of it." And anyway, Louis came over after the matches and apologized for what he said and everything, and started quizzing me. I told him, he said, "What do you do?" I said, "I'm in school. I play football and wrestle and track." And he said, "You got a lot of spunk for a little feller." And I said, yes, sir. And he gave me his card. He said, if you ever get up to 200 pounds and want to try out, you call me. And I carried that in my wallet for 2.5 years, and then went down and he hooked me up with Rick Connors in Knoxville. And that's how I got the
Louis
business.
DeLay trained me. So yeah, I know Louis well.
So I had a lot of help at the time. You know, back then it was harder to get in the business than it is now. And to reiterate what you were saying, you know, about matches, Charlie, when I went to New York in 2006, Arn Anderson told me, he said, you know, it's not like it was. So I'm just telling you. So, and I told those guys, I said, you guys couldn't work in the business 20 years ago, because there was times that you never met the guy till you got in the ring. They were separate dressing rooms. And I said, you know, you can't sit back here. I said, if it takes you all 4 hours to get a 4 minute, if y'all can't get it in 4 hours, the people ain't gonna get it in 4 minutes. Amen. So, you know, that's just the way the business has gone to. You know, the art of wrestling as working is gone pretty much. So.
Tim, don't you think the main ingredient missing, or maybe it's just me thinking this way, is the psychology everybody learned back in the day?
Yeah, there is no psychology anymore. That was you know, being able to work secured your job back then. It doesn't now. Brad and I had this conversation. I couldn't tell you how many times, you know, because, you know, everybody at some point gets, you know, why is this guy getting a push? He can't lace my boots up, or, you know, the stuff. And we called it the curse, you know, because I went 12 years during the old territory days of not missing a day of work. Because number one, I learned early, everybody can't be the quarterback. Somebody's got to block. And we looked at ourselves as utility guys. When you take a guy like Brad, who can work anywhere on the card, opening match or main event with anybody, that's a valuable asset to a company. And that was just, you know, we could work. When I first went to Watts, Jake Roberts told me, said, you'll only be there 6 months because Bill won't let you stay that long. I stayed 13 months and I left on my own. And that's when I came to Continental the first time. But, and I went back and Bill said, you're welcome back here anytime. I learned more there than I did anywhere at that point in my career.
Did you learn it on those 400-mile trips talking to some of the older guys, maybe?
Well, you certainly had time. You know, they were good at that point. I mean, I can go back and I've got pictures and stuff. You know, I wish I'd had a cell phone back then and got some pictures. And then again, we've discussed that with a couple of other guys. If we'd had cell phones, we'd all been in jail. But
it's true.
You know, but I fulfilled a dream. You know, when I got in the business, I wanted to work at the Tally Ward. That was, you know, that was it for me. Then I said, well, you know, I'd like to go to work the Civic Center in Knoxville, the old Civic Center. And then I thought, gosh, if I could get to Atlanta and be in the Omni, and did that, and ended up, you know, working in 28 different countries, all 50 states, the Cow Palace in San Francisco, the old Boston Gardens, Madison Square Gardens, Maple Leaf Gardens, Superdome. I mean, it's just amazing. I wish I would have written all this down back then, because it was amazing. I got to see the world without joining the Navy. So I don't have any qualms at all.
Going back to what you made, a very, very interesting statement. If we had all had cell phones back in the day, 76 when I started through, when I wrapped mine up and had just taped part of the matches and the house shows, how much money, Tim, would we be worth today?
You know, I worked with Gino Hernandez in the Sportatorium in Dallas. I mean, I was pretty green then, but you know, I could listen. You know, I knew when to open my mouth and when not to, and being able to do that, you know, it's just, it was just, I remember when Arn Anderson came down to Louisiana, and well, actually, let me tell you this first. Tony Anthony and I went down together out of the Charlotte office. We both were just trying to get our foot in the door when Blackjack Mulligan and Ric Flair came to Knoxville in '81. And that didn't turn out the way they'd hoped. And so Jack liked us, gave me my first full-time job in the business and took me to Carolinas. And then we did all we could there. And Jake helped us get booked in Louisiana. And Buck Robley was booking at the time when we went in, and they'd never seen us, didn't know us. It was just, I was on first because they just put us together instead of, and we tore the house down. I'll just tell you, it was amazing. But we worked together forever. We knew each other, and Buck came in. He said, guys, these two guys are looking for somebody's position. And he came back later and said, thank you. He said, you woke these guys up a little bit, and it made them work harder. So, but that was just, we were hungry at the time. So,
did you ever work with Les Thornton?
Les Thornton?
Les Thornton, yeah.
Yes.
Did he?
I had eight 1-hour Marcus of Queens matches with him.
Did he sing the match as everybody with you?
I'm sorry?
Did he sing the matches? Did he call the match and sing while he was doing it?
Oh, not the whole match, but at times, yeah.
Okay. that was
a solo.
But I sang Receipt to him many times.
Oh man, I used to, and Tony Charles, when those two would work together, I could not sit at ringside because I would just.
He was fun.
When those two worked together, They would have me just cracking up with the way they worked their matches, and that was a heck of a match to see.
When I was watching, Southeastern in the mid 70s, 75, 76, Tony Charles was up here. He worked for Ron. And then when I was down there in '83, I think maybe he came through.
Yeah.
Worked with him in Dothan. And what a pleasure. Gee whiz. To have seen him, sitting on the couch watching him at home, and then 5 years later you're in the ring with him. It was just amazing.
And there's another. That's a bad point to bring up, but it needs to be said. Another one we lost too early to Alzheimer's, and all the bumps that you guys took through the years. A lot of people have fallen into that. And of course, Tony was a boxer before he was a wrestler. Am I right on that, Tim?
Yes.
That's what I thought. He had taken a lot of hits to the head. But man, good talking to you. You were great talent in this business, and just wish we could one more time maybe have a 3 or 4 year run with the crew we had in about '83 in here. Wouldn't that be fun?
It would be amazing. My mind says go, but the body says whoa.
I think everybody else says, "Oh, yeah. Let's go."
Several years ago, I was working over in Sevier County that had the fair, and Dave's on me. Hey, come on, we'll put you in something tag match. You won't have to do much. And I said, but you get in there, and then you get to feeling it, and the people got behind it, and and I slammed this guy, and I went to the top rope, and I looked around. I thought, what in the world am I doing up here? And I just walked back.
You just got down, get down from there.
Yeah, exactly.
Charlie, you made a good point earlier about different styles. I think that's what's missing. Everybody has the same style. Doesn't matter who it is. Any show you watched one match, basically you've seen them all. Same thing over and over again, regardless. Whereas you were talking about, you have different styles. You had
What they have now, Rodney, is not even wrestling. It's acrobatics.
yes,
And how Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone, and I've only watched that show 1.5 times. I'm of the old Ron Fuller persuasion. I've never watched a WrestleMania. I'm sorry. I've seen excerpts from it, but I've never watched one all the way through. But how Jim and Tony and over on the WWE side, how Lawler sits there because there's nothing for them to call. Think about
I can tell you how they do it. I can tell you how.
Well, it's like
well, yeah, there you go, Jack. You're right.
it's like
depends on how many zeros on that check.
yeah. Well, like watching a tennis match. You know, it's back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until the ball stops. You can't absorb what they're doing.
Yeah, kind of like Lucha Libre.
Yeah,
that's what it reminds me of a lot. When we first watched, we had a satellite we had put here in the house. We were able to watch wrestling from Mexico, and we watched that. And we thought, what in the world are they doing? We couldn't figure out or make heads or tails of what they were doing, especially in a tag match. We couldn't figure out anything they were doing. Had 2 referees. One of them had a glove on. We didn't know what they were doing.
You know, it goes back to, you know, they've got the training center, WWE does, you know, but your product becomes cookie cutter.
Yes.
And your guys come out, they all are ripped, tan, and tattooed with beards. And I don't watch it enough to put them all up together like a.
Now, do you have a problem with people with beards there, Tim?
No, not exactly.
Okay, I'm just wondering. I didn't want to start nothing.
No,
because somebody on the panel has a beard here. We might be problems here. I don't want to have to.
And I got a tattoo.
The referee shirt out.
You see what I'm saying, though? When they put the chyrons up, you know, they all look. I don't watch it enough to know who's who, so it's hard to get behind somebody that you can't pick him out in a lineup. You know what I'm saying? So
right.
But with that being said, if they're all being trained by the same person, they're all going to have the same traits. They're all going to do the same thing. I mean, because that's what they've learned and that's what they know. Back then, we learned by getting in the ring every night, by working on the road every night. You know, if you were green and you could get in the ring with a guy that knew, you can't learn from anybody that don't know anything than you. And if you get in the ring with a guy that can work, I mean, you learn something every night. I did. I made it a point to. I picked veterans' brains. I would go in and I'd say, "Hey, watch my match," and it got me in trouble. I said that the other night with wrestling too, but yeah. but I always did that, you know, because down the road, you know, it's kind of like with Arn Anderson. Flair saw him and said, "Hey, here's a kid that looks like Ole," and that's how it all started. But it was a veteran who travels a lot, looking at all the talent. So, you know, I always picked their brain. It was just part of what I did. I just back then, you know, like you said, we were sitting in a car. I was picking brains. I'd ride with Ted DiBiase, Ernie Ladd. I got under the learning tree. Y'all been there, haven't you?
Yeah, the big cat, Ernie Ladd.
Ernie the cat.
I loved Ernie. I went home. I spent at Ernie's house several times, you know, and he would say, he's the one that gave me the name Horn Frog, and he'd say, "Horn Frog, get under the learning tree. You got to." Wanted me to drive him, which I didn't mind, you know, because it was his gas or Bill's gas and his gas, so you know it was a free ride and an education. You know, I tried to learn from everybody. I didn't use everything. I always told guys, advice is free. Whether you use it or not, you know, don't turn it down. Just, you don't have to use it, but it doesn't cost you anything.
Yeah.
So, you know, I tried to absorb all I could at that point in my career.
You had a great run. There's no doubt about it. I just can't. The thing that I cannot, and you've already mentioned some things that make me think Tim Horner was when you were up there working as what they call an agent. I know that had to be frustrating for you, watching what they were doing and knowing there was a better mousetrap to be built.
Absolutely. You know, it was, you know, as an agent, you had one match on the TV that night. That's all you had, one match. But you sat there at the table, you know, right beside Vince, and you know, he's hearing everything you're saying to the referee and doing this, and you know, and if a match went bad, it was your fault. Now, I stood up to Vince one time and I said, Vince, I can only tell him once he goes through that curtain, he's on his own. I can't go out there and do it for him. It's kind of like coaching football or baseball. You tell them what to do and how to do it, but you can't do it for them. And so a lot of times there was a lot of heat on the agents that probably should have went on the talent. But, you know, at the end of the day, it fell back on the agents. And it was just tough sometimes. But I enjoyed it. I mean, you know, it was taking some guys, because I'd show them old school stuff that they'd never seen before. You know, just drop down, get it again. They said, get what? You know,
that point, you just throw your hands up and said, well, forget it.
Hey, simple is good. You know?
So are you saying if you told them to milk it, they would go get some milk somewhere?
Yeah. That's
We shouldn't make fun of them.
We used to get in, you know, when I was up there, we'd go early. I'd get in the ring because I enjoyed it, you know. And when the Miz first came up, he was just hot off of TMZ or whatever it was he was on, and MTV, and you know, I worked out with him a lot in there. And then, you know, of course, he's done well. But yeah, just I go, you know, you just look and you watch and say, why in the world did he do that? Yeah, why would he do that? You know, and I tried to explain to those guys how we did it, and they said, well, how did you didn't sit back and remember this stuff? I said, I didn't know what I was going to do. I said, I didn't have to remember nothing because I didn't know what I was going to do till I got out there. If and this is the problem today, they've got that match set, and if they stray one way or the other, you know, they're lost. They don't know how to go back and pick it up. And I told them, I said, I don't know what I'm going to do till I get. All I know is the finish. You know, we don't know what's going on until we get out there. And that way I don't have to worry about whether I'm going to forget it or not. Because if I'm doing something and they're not biting, you know, we're going to go another route and see, you know, we got somebody hooked on here. So
we were talking about that, being able to change course right in the middle of the match. When do you know when to do it? That's when the people's not responding. We were talking about that on a previous program.
I'll tell you one match. It was me and Brad and Bob against the Midnight Express and Dick Murdoch.
Ooh.
And spot where Dick held Brad and Bobby went to punch Brad. Brad ducked and he hit Dick. Well, Dick got mad and walked across the ring and got in our corner for half the match. and we're still, and then he went right back and he got tremendous heat. You know, it was working. You know,
that's great.
we were. I mean, I was under the ring. I was tore up. I was like, oh, you know, situations because Murdoch was funny.
You know where Murdoch, one of his first jobs was in wrestling?
No,
right here, Gulf Coast.
Really?
He was Ron Carson, brother to Don Carson, tag team. What are you laughing about? I mean, heck, they tore this place up.
I bet they did.
In more ways than one.
What Dad told us about Ron Carson.
I was like 10 years old watching it in black and white TV when that was going on. I'll tell my age. But yeah, let me ask you before I forget it. But with both Timmy and with Jack, since you knew Louie, Louie was sort of responsible for Hulk Hogan's career getting started. It happened right here in Dothan. they had broke his leg down there in Florida and told him he was no good and would never be able to do anything, which is pretty well true. And then he came to Dothan TV one afternoon. He was playing bass guitar in a rock band, and they were playing either over Savannah, I think, or Augusta somewhere. And he came in and met Louis. We were back there in the offices. He says, "I want to be a wrestler." And I guess Louis knew from Malenko or Matsuda, whoever, that they had tried him out a little bit down there. And Louis, how short he was, he looks up at him. He says, "I want you to be a wrestler." That French accent and everything. Yeah. And put him in the ring that afternoon before TV. And that doofus did not even know to raise his arm, countering off the ropes. He never got that far in school down there. And so, had it not been for Louis and a couple of the guys, his first TV match, he'd have gone out the TV audience. And all he did the first 6 weeks of his career was do the squeeze deal, drop the elbow, and that was it. And week number 7 in the business put him with Andre at the Houston County Farm Center.
I saw pictures of that. Yeah,
that's how it all started. And after the Friday night show at the Farm Center, came back, did TV, and that's where that infamous arm wrestling thing goes on with me and Dickie Steinborn, Andre, and Hulk, and we sold out New Brockton the next night and Pensacola on Sunday that night, and Pensacola on Sunday night. But the question is, did any of you two guys that work with Louis ever go to the house and eat some of his food?
Never had that.
I did not.
We're doing TVs on Saturday. Louis took a liking to me, and I had to go to his house. He lived not far from me here in Dothan at the time. And Louis, I understand in later years, opened a restaurant, and I can understand why. The guy could cook one hell of a killer omelet. Let me tell you, that was the highlight of my Saturday, not doing TV, but going to Louis' house, and he would feed me breakfast and go over anything he wanted me to know about TV that day. But he was one heck of a cook.
Yeah.
Wow.
Louis used to talk about
that tongue lashing he gave me that night was about.
Well, if I should leave you in any moment here, yes. There's a storm happening here.
Apparently, our lights are flickering here,
and our lights are going off and on here. So if we should leave, but we're running out of time anyway, Rodney. You might want to tell Charlie, because Charlie can't hear me for some reason.
Charlie, he's saying that you've been a complete bore tonight.
And he has too.
No, he did not.
And Jack has set a bad example. Blowing that damn smoke in everybody's face.
And Tim besmirching people with beards. And it's just been a banner night. No doubt about it.
And tattoos.
And tattoos, that's right. Tattoos. He besmirched people with tattoos and beards.
No, y'all took that out of text now.
Welcome to the internet, Tim.
That's right. That's right. You think we should catch up on some of these questions, Brent?
Yeah, we'll catch up on some of them and see where we were at. Make sure we don't do Chris Vick. Hey, Chris, need to watch your language a little bit, buddy. They'll be getting on to us for that. Let's see. Let's go back up and see where we were at. I think I've forgotten where we were at. Let's see. All right, I think right here, David Lawson. He asked, did the West brothers go to multiple schools growing up while traveling with Ron?
That is correct. 12 schools, 12 years. And not 12 consecutive. That would be in the last like high school, 12. I mean, by the time we're finished, and especially in the last, we went to 6 schools in the last 4 years of high school. So yeah, 12 different schools through the whole time.
Charles asks, he says the Columbia Township Auditorium in Columbia, South Carolina is one of his favorite wrestling arenas, and I would agree with him on that one. Chris Vick, Northwest Georgia, Danny D's had a good old school shows at the White Gym in White, Georgia. I've been there before. It's a nice facility. Saw a picture today of Ron West, Wrestling 2 and Dick Slater, Tommy Rich, and Tony Atlas with Jimmy Carter's mother at the Municipal Auditorium in Columbus, Georgia. Yeah, she was there many times while we were there back in those days.
Yeah, I saw her several times when I was there.
Chris said the Carrollton, Georgia, the VFW Fairgrounds. Charles Alford said Greensboro Coliseum. That is a great place. Hey, Bubba Griffin, Pensacola is in the house. Mike Schaefer told us good stuff. Let's see. Let's see. Charlie, Charles Alford said, wow, good info, Mr. Platt. I think you'll have to tell him that if he hadn't read it.
Brent said that Charles Alford said that, wow, good info, Mr. Platt.
So what now?
No, he was saying that you were giving some good info. This Charles Alfred.
Okay, here's a question I want to answer. Michael Calloway says, good evening to everybody. By the way, the Lord humongous Jeff Van Camp is watching us tonight.
Oh,
hello,
no.
Jeff. Yes. Good. One of the nicest guys ever in the business.
I'm just wondering if Jeff has a beard or tattoos.
He didn't the last time I saw him. This guy, here's
proud on that on this channel.
Here's a good question. When Jim Barnett ran Dothan in December of 1976, with a combined Atlanta-Tampa crew, was his plan to buy the entire Gulf Coast or just add Dothan, Panama City to either Georgia or the Florida territories? Barnett planned to run. He was planning to buy the whole thing from Lee Fields, but he found out in 2 runs that it did not work off of a TV not produced in this area, and not throwing off on any of the talent. Do not get me wrong. We've had this conversation before. That first match that they ran, first night they ran, had Abdullah, had Slater, had the Andersons, had Bob Backlund, had Wrestling 2. I'm just naming a few of them because, as Michael said, it was some Tampa talent with the Georgia talent. And that was my first meeting of 2 rednecks named Randy Rose, and it was Randy Alls at the time, and Jerry Stubbs. And they ran Dothan and New Brockton on 2 occasions, and he laid a big egg with it. And he told Lee, I don't want it. I'm sorry. But, December 76 is when that occurred. And you think about the 76, latter part of 76, who all was in Tampa. Steve Kern was on that card, too. I mean, it was a sellout at the Omni type deal, but maybe drew 500 people.
Now, they didn't do an original production there at the time either. They sent tapes in. Is that what they did?
Exactly, Rodney. They sent all the tapes were sent in from Atlanta and the interviews from some of the Florida guys, and it just did not gel with the fans down here. It did not gel at all. Tim
Horner, Charles Alford said he remembered you coming to Ohio Wrestling as an agent.
Went missing in a lot of the later parts of Continental and other territories in general. We were trying to cover too much ground.
I agree with that. Absolutely.
Trying to expand out, and we quit using the show to really personalize Dothan, Birmingham, Knoxville like we really should have.
Exactly.
And a lot of it was personal with whatever TV you were on, whether it be BIR in Knoxville, Channel 6 in Birmingham, 4 down here. These people wanted to think this product, and when they did think it was made especially for them, it helped with the houses. Tim, do you agree with that?
Absolutely. Homegrown.
That was it. And everybody talks. It wanted to compete. They wanted to compete with Vince, and I understand why. But I think if some folks had just stayed where they were, they could have stayed alive a lot longer instead of trying to follow in his footsteps. Does that make any sense to you guys?
I think the classic example is Memphis. Jerry Jarrett stayed in Memphis, and he held on and held out longer than anybody else by keeping the same show right there on Memphis TV for all those years. Chattanooga, when they had a live show at WDF Channel 12, it did great business. Put the tape in there, never did draw as good as Nick Goulas did. Never did.
No. And I think with Continental, we gave them the early part of Continental and the latter part of Continental. We gave them too much on the TV. We gave them too much of the angles and the main events, where we gave them the angle and the studio matches, but they had to come pay to see the blow off, right?
Exactly right. And that was the difference between being an arena-driven territory and a TV. And when your main source of revenue is coming from ticket sales, you should be driving the people to the arena. I think you've hit the nail right on the head on that.
Here's something else people do not take into consideration. We did not, and when I say we, I'm speaking Ron and the territory owners, did not pay all kind of high dollar costs for production when we were in the TV studios. That was a barter deal because the TV wanted the entertainment quality. They wanted the show.
Right.
And doing it in their studio really meant a whole lot more. And Birmingham, we would send those tapes a week later to Birmingham, Montgomery, Mississippi, all over the country, all over the Southeast. But we were only spending like $550 a week at TV, buying a saturation package of commercials during the week to promote the Farm Center and promote Watch Us on TV Saturday afternoon at 5:30. Well, when we went to the arenas, whether it be Straight Fur or whoever it was, or whoever, Turner was paying himself to do it, heck, I checked up for Ronnie one night in Dothan, and Turner was charging himself like $30,000 to bring 2 trucks down from Atlanta to Dothan, right, to tape a bunch of matches. So the cost of everything just went out the roof. And when we got out of the TV studios, so what happens? Everybody's pay goes down, and it gets harder to make it work.
Right. Tim, you were going to say something about that. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying it was more personable to do it that just it out there and letting it stick where it was. I mean, you knew your markets, you knew your Birmingham was your hot town, so, and you catered to Birmingham, you catered to Dothan on Saturday, those were your money. And I remember coming in '83, as Charlie alluded to earlier, that was a hot year down there. I came in and right out of Louisiana, worked with Chick Donovan and took the U.S. straight. Fight him for it, but I did. But yeah, that's when I've come in. But business was good everywhere. I mean, every town, even the spot shows were good. So, but it was personable. the people that they said that's our wrestling.
Exactly. And then the big show wasn't happening in somewhere else. The big show was in your hometown. It was in Dothan or in Birmingham or Knoxville or Chattanooga. You didn't have to wait to see it on the pay-per-view, or it's going to happen in Charlotte or it's going to happen in Greensboro. It was happening in your town. And I think that was important. The big show was in your town, not somebody else's town.
Something interesting about it, though, back in '83, like Tim was talking about, in those years, we were up against Atlanta. Our TV was playing up against the Georgia Championship Wrestling show. We were head-to-head competition with them, and we were winning out.
Numbers were good.
Oh, numbers were fantastic. You know, Ron and I talked about this not too long ago. We mentioned it last time I was on. If you take Dothan, Birmingham, Knoxville, Mobile, all the different TVs we were on back in the day, and add all those numbers together, we were drawing 1 million to 1.5 million viewers a week, just in Alabama and East Tennessee and parts of Mississippi and the Florida Panhandle. And my gosh, if these goobers today come up with 1 million viewers, they have a damn party nationwide.
Yeah, they're cutting backflips if they can do 1 million view buy.
And it's like you said, Tim, it was personal. It was the people were part of it. And when they came to the arenas, you could feel it in that old farm center. And you could feel it in a lot of the arenas that the people, especially working babyface like you did, they were a part of your life. And they bought groceries.
You go back, and we were accessible to the crowd. You know, they're not now. Everybody sneaks in the back door and sneaks out. I don't know. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the fans, going out and sitting in the hall and selling pictures and doing all that and interacting with them. I don't know how many apple pies that old grannies had brought to us and on the road and stuff like that. And that was just good experiences, but it was personable when you could go back the next week and say, hey, Beulah, Bouncing Beulah she fed the Armstrongs. I don't know how many times.
I got a trivia question for you. Montgomery, Alabama. What was the pecan pie lady's name?
Oh, Lord.
Uh-huh.
Oh, you're going to stump me on that one.
Spider.
Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah. I remember Tommy Rich going, "Where's Spider at?"
Heck, they'd fight over her pecan pies. It'd be a shoot in the dressing room over a piece of pecan pie.
Yeah.
Hey, Bob said, Bob Blackburn, which was the DI, said no pie for the heels.
Pie for the heels.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bob. We're sorry you didn't get a pie.
There's some people they liked, and then some they didn't, and apparently you were one they didn't.
Yeah.
Doing your job. Hey, Brian Green had a question about the city championship tag jackets when they had the Gulf Coast. Can you tell us anything about the city championship tag jackets?
That's where we're going to have to get Norris on one night with he and I both showing some of the old footage. But yes, Dothan had tag championships, and sometimes they did not all the time use belts. They would use jackets, trophies, and Mobile had tag champions. They had a Mobile City champion. And you got to understand, in those days we're talking about, there were actually 3 promotions in the Gulf Coast. Rocky McGuire, who was brought in here as a referee and promoter, so to speak, by Buddy Fuller years ago. Rocky ran Dothan, Panama City, and he also ran Quincy, Florida. Those were, and he had a spot show. In the middle, you had Mobile and Pensacola, where a lot of the guys would work both sides, Mobile talent and the other talent would all mix, and they'd all work Mobile. And then Bob Kelly booked Mobile, Pensacola, and the southern part of Mississippi. And then on over is where I think at once upon a time, Ron West was over there running that Louisiana end, and there were other people over there. So there were so many different titles and things running around, but it goes back to what Mr. Horner said. It was personal. It was local.
Exactly.
And it made it draw that much better, I think.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are running out of time.
Hold on. Charlie, Brent just said that we are running out of time. Continue.
Continue. We're running out of time. Why?
No,
We're running out of time, Charlie.
We are running out of time. Brent will now continue to talk. Go ahead.
I wonder, this is the question I have to ask. Rodney can hear me. Jack can hear me, and I think Tim can hear me.
Absolutely.
But Charlie can't hear me. I wonder what is it because
he's like everybody else.
Charlie
Can tune you out.
Yeah, Charlie can hear you. He just doesn't like what you're saying.
I got you.
That's right. See?
That's
Charlie,
understandable.
We feel the same way. We feel the same way.
And working with the circus, I always like working with Ron a lot better than
All right, I'll emphasize for Brent here. We are running out of time here, so we're going to cut us off here.
Yes, we are running out of time. Tim, thank you so much for coming on. We appreciate it. And also, and tell Charlie.
Okay, hold on.
Appreciate him coming
on.
He
wants us to tell Charlie. Go ahead.
Well, we thank him so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for coming on.
And we hope that he can hear me next time.
And you can hear him next time.
Yeah, and the cigar smoke did kind of get to my COPD a little bit.
I have COPD. You need to try this. It clears you right up.
And Tim Horner, you are always one of my favorite folks to be around. Never a cross word and always a solid worker, my buddy.
Thank you, sir. It's good seeing you.
Good seeing you. Good hearing you.
All right, folks, we appreciate it. Jack, thank you so much. Ronnie, thank you so much. And don't forget, if you are watching this on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. And if you're watching on Facebook, like and subscribe. Thank you so much, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Wrestling Conversation.
Charlie, Brent just said blah, 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 blah.
Blah, blah, back.